Amazing boy exposes hidden case error, transforming his life after millionaire lawyer's cruelty. Ethan Carter stood behind the counter of his family's diner, the scent of bacon grease and fresh coffee swirling around him like a comforting blanket. The moment was mundane, yet that afternoon, it felt like the air thrummed with something electric. The diner was his realm, a place where he could hide from the weight of numbers and letters that twisted like knots inside his mind. Learning disabilities had shaped his journey, limiting him in ways that gnawed at his self-worth. His little sister Lily adored him, often imitating his mannerisms, and he feared letting her see any trace of weakness, worried that she might one day emulate his struggles instead of his courage. As he wiped down the countertop, his jaw clenched, a newspaper caught his eye amid the clutter. Curiosity won over duty, and he rifled through the ink-stained pages until one headline leaped out at him, a report on a legal case involving his late grandfather. His stomach sank. The story detailed how a powerful law firm had steamrolled over his family, stealing what should have been theirs, an inheritance that had been hard-won by a man he admired but never knew. The words dripped betrayal, awakening an anger deep within him that he couldn't suppress. Why didn't anyone fight back? He muttered to himself, heat rising to his cheeks. His heart raced, but beneath the anger lurked a gnawing doubt. Could he, a mere boy working in a diner, challenge millionaire lawyers who wielded ignorance as a weapon? The thought tightened his chest, causing his breath to hitch. Questions swirled in his mind like a tornado. What made him think he could make a dent in their empire? He could almost hear their derisive laughter, dismissing him before he even spoke. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The frustration boiled his pulse, quickening as the shadows of their arrogance danced mockingly in his mind. He felt the whispers of doubt creeping in, taunting him, imploring him to turn away. But then he thought of his grandfather, the stories of a man who faced countless rejections but never backed down. Memories flooded in, the warmth of his family's story juxtaposed with the chill of what had been lost. Ethan's fingers tightened around the newspaper, muscles coiling as he made a silent pact. He would not let fear silence him, though trembling uncertainty flickered within. The diner felt less bright now, Lily giggling with a customer barely piercing through Ethan's suffocating need for righteousness. In a moment perched on the precipice of decision, he recalled Mr. Thompson, the retired schoolteacher from down the block. The old man saw potential in Ethan when no one else did. Intelligence comes in many forms, he remembered Mr. Thompson's wise words. Fighting the rising tide of despair, Ethan summoned courage from uncertainty, the same bubbling anger forging a path toward rebirth. As doubt wrestled for dominance in his heart, the looming threat of the millionaires haunted him. The stakes had risen, failure wasn't just as failure would dim the spark of hope in his sister's eyes. This was more than a legal battle, it became a personal mission to honor his family's legacy. Could he stand firm despite the odds when derision awaited him? The answer felt as ephemeral as the steam curling from a forgotten coffee cup just out of reach, leaving him clinging desperately to his fragile resolve. Ethan took a deep breath, the weight of his resolve settling heavily on his chest. He turned toward the back of the diner, where the buzzing neon sign cast strange shadows, distorting familiar corners into a lurking uncertainty. The familiar clanging of dishes echoed, but a new sound emerged in his mind, the unmistakable rush of purpose. He pictured himself with a briefcase rather than an apron, guided not just by familial obligation but by newfound determination. With Lily giggling in the background, he felt a warm spark grow in his chest, fanning out the fear. Suddenly, this wasn't just about his family's inheritance, it was his own liberation from a life confined by limits and assumptions. He glanced out at the bustling street through the diner's window, imagining the crowds in suits hurrying past, oblivious to the truth hidden underneath their polished surfaces. Could he stand among them as one of their own? By the end of the day, Ethan had settled into a routine of contemplation fused with action. Mornings began with a drive to the library, trading shifts of time at the diner to absorb every legal tutorial he could find. Each book became a cornerstone, each case study a beacon of knowledge illuminating his path. He had learned about case law, the intricacies of rights and ownership, and how even the tiniest detail could flip the narrative of a case. What once felt like insurmountable challenges evolved into questions he was eager to tackle. What evidence did his family truly have? Were there documents, photographs, or affidavits waiting to be unearthed? And what if, against all odds, someone believed in him? The idea reverberated through him, slowly silencing the voice of doubt, transforming it into something energizing. As days melded into weeks, the diner transformed into a classroom. He practiced his rhetoric during quiet spells, delivering impromptu speeches to an audience of coffee mugs and ketchup bottles. "Your Honor," he would begin, mimicking a posture of confidence, as he envisioned the courtroom. In his mind, he was no longer just Ethan the unfortunate boy but Ethan the challenger, with convictions that demanded attention. Mr. Thompson regularly found a seat at the diner, eager to hear the latest developments. It was during one of these visits that Ethan landed an unexpected breakthrough. "You understand, Ethan, that the law favors those who prepare meticulously," Mr. Thompson shared. His eyes sparkled with the thrill of imparting wisdom. "Aim to learn what they fear, and exploit that knowledge." Ethan absorbed those words like a sponge, a plan hatching in his mind. A strategy began to take shape, methods coalescing around the concept of strength through awareness. He would scrutinize the law firm's past cases, identifying any patterns of misconduct. The clock ticked away, each second a reminder of his ever-growing resolve. The moment arrived when he heard whispers of a local event, a gathering of prominent lawyers discussing community outreach but, more importantly, sharing their successes and failures. Ethan felt an irresistible pull. This event would present both a challenge and an opportunity. Could he confront the very people who had woven around him a fabric of doubt and intimidation? The idea was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. The thought nagged at him, morning and night, till the moment of truth peeked over the horizon. This was an opportunity to reveal not just hidden truths about his family but to discover truths about himself. Could he walk among them without faltering? Could he rise, armed with nothing but determination? He clenched his fists, adrenaline surging just at the thought. The time had come to step away from the shadows and stride into the light. With the diner bustling behind him, he set his sights on the door, a sense of urgency pulsing through his veins. Little did he know that confronting his fears could demand more than he ever anticipated. Would he emerge victorious, or would the weight of his doubts prove too heavy? As Ethan approached the event, an unexpected cocktail of excitement and dread twisted in his gut. The facade of normalcy cracked with each step, the polished exterior of the venue loomed before him like a castle of privilege and power. He could picture the lawyers within, laughing and exchanging pleasantries, all while cloaked in a layer of deception that he would soon challenge. Doubt crept in like a thief in the night, whispering that he didn't belong. But he shoved it aside, reminding himself of the nights spent studying law books and rehearsing arguments in front of the unsparing gaze of inanimate objects. He took a deep breath, attempting to align his racing thoughts. This was not merely a gathering, it was a battlefield. Inside, the ambience was electric, humming with the chatter of well-dressed professionals. Ethan's heart pounded as he took in the sheen of polished surfaces, the clinking of glasses, and the confident smiles exchanged among people who had no idea of the truth he bore. With every moment spent in their company, he felt like a ghost, a lingering presence teetering on the edge of visibility. He spotted Mr. Thompson talking with a group of established lawyers, their laughter echoing sharply. Ethan's throat tightened as he observed the ease with which they maneuvered their conversations, their stories woven with threads of success and charisma. Here, he was an outsider. Yet, the words of his mentor replayed in his mind, exploit their fears. He anchored himself to that resolve, pushing past the initial wave of hesitation. Positioning himself near the refreshments, he eavesdropped, absorbing snippets of discussions around recent cases, victories, and failures. The air crackled with ambition and sharp intellect. Could he find the cracks in their polished veneers? As he focused, details began to emerge. A careless mention of a recent foreclosure case ignited a flicker of recognition. After countless nights reviewing legal records, he remembered reading about it, a glaring error in the filings that hinted at negligence, a case ripe for exploitation. With newfound determination, Ethan approached Mr. Thompson, who had turned towards him, surprise flickering in his eyes. "There you are, Ethan. I didn't expect to see you here," he said, 1,000 accusing looks from the others somehow anchoring Ethan in place. "I overheard something that might be relevant," Ethan said, the words tumbling out before he could second-guess them. Mr. Thompson listened intently as Ethan articulated his observations, his heart racing but his voice steadying as he presented the case's flaws. To his astonishment, the faces surrounding him shifted from amusement to intrigue. Mr. Thompson's eyes gleamed with recognition, lending Ethan the confidence of an unexpected ally. "Well spotted," Thompson replied, the thrill of the moment propelling Ethan forward. Yet, that surge of confidence was tinged with apprehension. He realized that sharing his insight could cast him into a spotlight he hadn't prepared for. Voices buzzed around him, now intensely interested in the boy who dared to speak up. Would they dismiss him as inexperienced, or could he earn their respect? The laughter faded, the weight of scrutiny curling over him like a heavy blanket. Would they accept his contributions, or was he fated to remain an outsider, forever judged by the apron he was so eager to shed? He took a calculated breath, the resolution to embrace vulnerability igniting a fire within him. "I believe this case has been mishandled, and I think I can prove it," he pressed on, each word echoing with a challenge that amplified his resolve. What came next would determine not only the fate of his assertions but the very fabric of his self-worth. He prepared himself for the inevitable pushback, confronting both the external criticism and his internal doubts. The moment felt monumental, a soft crack echoing of a formidable wall he was ready to break through, or so he hoped. Across the room, he met the gaze of one of the adversaries, an established lawyer known for merciless discourse. The flames of confrontation danced before him, and the world seemed to narrow around them. Ethan felt the ground shift beneath his feet as the clash of progress and tradition hung in the air. With his heart racing, he realized that he was poised for a battle that transcended this case. And as their eyes locked, he understood, there was no turning back. The fight for his voice, for validation, for his place in this world had truly begun. Ethan braced himself as the imposing lawyer locked eyes with him, the unrelenting intensity of the man radiating a quiet challenge. The cacophony of conversations around him faded into the background, the weight of their expectations pressing down on him like a storm cloud ready to burst. "Prove it." The lawyer echoed, a hint of derision playing on his lips. "You might want to tread lightly, rookie. It's one thing to observe, it's quite another to challenge established norms. The courtroom is less forgiving than this little gathering." Every ounce of Ethan's trained instincts screamed to retreat, to shrink back into anonymity. Yet, an unexpected fierceness ignited within him. He remembered countless late nights analyzing case law, memorizing court procedures, the journey that had led him to this very moment. "I'm not afraid of the courtroom," Ethan replied, forcing steadiness into his voice. "I'm not afraid of you either." The words slipped out like the first splash of cold water on a summer day, unplanned but refreshing in their clarity. The group of lawyers around them paused, each face reflecting a mix of surprise and intrigue. The tension in the air thickened as if everyone was waiting for the stakes to be raised. "Very brave," the lawyer replied, subtle amusement lighting his features. "But bravery can be misplaced." The exchange seemed to draw a crowd, critics forming like vultures anticipating a falter. Ethan's heartbeat accelerated further, a strange compulsion driving him forward. He embraced the scrutiny, using it to fuel his argument. "I've reviewed the foreclosure documents," he asserted, steadying himself. "The filings contain inconsistencies that suggest negligence on the part of the previous legal team. If you're genuinely invested in the pursuit of justice, then the facts should matter, shouldn't they? After all, they hold more weight than titles and reputations." The ripple of murmurs filled the air, a mix of disbelief and excitement from the audience. Even Mr. Thompson shifted closer, an approving nod encouraging Ethan's momentum. Justice, huh? The established lawyer countered, his smile widening, but with an edge that was almost predatory. What about your lack of experience, your absence of tangible success? You think a few documents can compensate for that? In that moment, Ethan felt the ground shift beneath him. Years of self-doubt coiled tighter, a familiar unease that summoned itself to the forefront. But as he looked around and met the eyes of his peers, he recalled each late-night study session, each painstakingly practiced argument. No, he would not let past failures dictate his future. I know I'm inexperienced, he admitted openly, a surprising rush of vulnerability slipping through his carefully crafted facade. But every established lawyer in this room started exactly where I am now. You were all once rookies, too, right? A silence enveloped the exchange, an uneasy pause that the audience seemed to relish. The lawyer laughed softly, the sound laced with disbelief. So you want to play the underdog card? How charming. But remember, the legal world isn't a fairy tale. Undeterred, Ethan pressed on. Maybe not. But it doesn't mean it's impossible either. There's always room for new perspectives, new insights possibly from someone without a dog in the fight. The tension escalated, the informal gathering transforming into a battleground of wits. Ethan felt an electric rush, each word he spoke threading a tapestry of defiance against a culture that demanded compliance. He was no longer just a spectator, he was weaving himself into a narrative that could reshape his path, yet beneath that adrenaline surged an awareness of the risks at play. His confidence teetered on the precipice of hubris. What if he overstepped? What if his boldness merely solidified the barriers he sought to dismantle? In that moment of clarity, he fleetingly considered retreating once more, questioning his resolve. But this time, the voices of doubt faded. He turned to Mr. Thompson, who now stood beside him, a challenge brewing in the depths of his eyes. Would you back me if I pursue this case further? Ethan asked, the question almost imploring. Only if you're ready to face whatever consequences arise from it, Thompson replied, his expression serious yet intrigued. You could make a name for yourself if you survive the fallout. Ethan felt the weight of those words settle deep within him, each syllable a plate tectonic shift in his understanding of who he could become. The fight for validation was becoming something more, it was a fight for his identity. The moment pulsed with unspent energy, the ultimate test of his determination looming just ahead. With every ounce of courage building inside him, Ethan prepared to take the plunge deeper into the fray. What lay beyond this moment could alter his future irrevocably. As his heart raced in anticipation, he recognized the inexorable truth, it was time to confront not just the established powers but the very depths of his own capabilities. Time itself felt suspended as he poised for action, aware that the next decision could either elevate him or bring about his downfall, and then, from the back of the room, another challenger stepped forward, a looming shadow from Ethan's past that threatened to unravel everything he had fought for. Ethan felt the air in the room shift as the familiar figure emerged from the shadows, a specter that had haunted his early career and filled him with uncertainty. It was Lucas Allen, a former colleague from his internship days, the one who had twice overshadowed him in court and turned every opportunity into a reminder of his own inadequacies. The confidence he had mustered began to waver as the weight of old fears settled on him once more. Ethan, Lucas said, his tone dripping with sarcasm, I didn't expect to see you trying to play with the big boys. This is rich. The tension morphed, shifting from the defensiveness against the established lawyer to a more personal confrontation. Ethan clenched his fists subtly at his sides, the urge to dismiss Lucas's taunts battling with the undeniable truth of their history. There was an innate desire within him to rise above this. He had fought hard for his place, yet the specter of Lucas had the potential to unravel that hard-won resolve. Rich in conviction, Ethan countered, fighting to keep his composure. What have you brought to this gathering other than mockery? Conviction is admirable, Lucas replied smoothly, his lips curling into a malicious grin. But it doesn't win cases. Experience, connections, and a well-crafted narrative do. Ethan instinctively felt the eyes of the room shift. He could sense the anticipation building, a collective hold of breath waiting for him to either collapse under pressure or step up to the challenge. "Well, I've got a narrative of my own," Ethan declared, his voice stronger than it felt in his mind. "One that starts with this foreclosure case and those glaring inconsistencies." Lucas's expression morphed from condescension to curiosity, and that shift revealed Ethan's strategy. He was no longer just reacting to fear. He was aiming to capitalize on their shared past, using Lucas as both a foil and a catalyst for his own transformation. The risk was palpable, yet it also felt invigorating. "Interesting that you would dig up documents," Lucas mused, his tone feigned amusement. "But if you were truly dedicated, you'd know that facts alone don't sway the court. You have to make people believe." "Believe what?" Ethan pressed, crossing over into Lucas's territory. "That a couple of golden words and a well-placed smile will win a case over truth." The murmurs in the room surged as Lucas's smug demeanor faltered. Ethan noted the shift in the atmosphere. He had managed to take control of the narrative, even if briefly. "Be careful you don't get burned," Lucas shot back, his eyes narrowing. "This isn't about proving some moral high ground. This is about winning." Ethan's heart raced, adrenaline surging with each word that unfurled between them. He was faced with two paths: absorb this animosity and cower, or channel it into something far greater, the determination to not only prove Lucas wrong but to establish his worth in a world where validation was hard-won. That he felt the momentum in his favor, and in that pivotal moment, something inside him clicked. This was not just a series of courtroom battles, it was a psychological game that he could navigate. Suddenly, he envisioned the expansive possibilities ahead, leveraging the case, if he pushed against Lucas's toxic narrative, perhaps forming unexpected allies even among those seasoned lawyers who had once cast him aside. "Then let us win," Ethan declared, his voice firm, each word a stepping stone toward a renewed sense of purpose. "Let us show this room what a fresh perspective can do. Not just for our benefit, but for those who depend on justice." He felt the ripple of impact through the audience, a moment of clarity resonating with them. They were not there merely to watch a spectacle, they were witnessing an emerging force, one unshackled from the confines of doubt. Lucas, taken aback, recovered quickly, but the spark of uncertainty flickered in his eyes. "Let us see if you can learn to swim in these waters, Ethan," he retorted, though the edge in his voice now carried a tinge of hesitation. As Ethan faced Lucas, he understood that this confrontation held the potential to challenge the very fabric of his identity. The depths of his past now surfaced, and he was ready to not just face these shadows but climb above them. He turned to Mr. Thompson, who watched with an approving nod, a silent acknowledgement that the battle had only just begun. "Are you with me?" Ethan asked, his mind racing with possibilities and contemplating the strategic steps ahead. There was no turning back now. The atmosphere thickened once more as Ethan now recognized that embracing the struggle could lead to something transformative. The journey now felt more than just professional, it was personal, a redefining of self that transcended competition. As he readied himself to dive deeper, a thought lingered in his mind: this was not merely about winning a case or fighting Lucas, it was about seizing control over his own destiny, and the stakes had just escalated. What if his next move inspired others to rise alongside him? Unbeknownst to him, the next challenge awaited. The question now loomed: how far was he willing to push against not just established authority, but the expectations he had imposed on himself? Ethan took a deep breath, scanning the room filled with seasoned lawyers, each eyes trained on him, some in skepticism, others in curiosity. The stakes had been laid bare, and for the first time in a long time, he felt the rush of potential stirring within him, propelling him forward rather than holding him back. What's next? He asked himself silently, as the weight of expectation loomed heavily. This was more than a single case, more than a mere confrontation with Lucas. This was a pivotal moment, a gateway to prove that he could be more than just someone who was living in the shadows. Digging within his mind, Ethan recalled the documents he had perused, the little inconsistencies in the foreclosure case that could become significant. Every fact, every detail mattered. What Lucas had said about winning based on belief was true, but there was a fine line between belief built on illusion and the kind anchored in truth. Determined, Ethan turned to Mr. Thompson. "We need to start drafting a new angle," he suggested, feeling the enthusiasm surging through him. "We leverage the inconsistencies, not just dead facts, but turning them into a narrative that speaks to the heart of the issue. These people are losing their homes. We need to humanize that struggle." Mr. Thompson's eyes lit up, impressed by Ethan's quick adaptation. "You recognize that these stories resonate more than any legal jargon we can throw at them." The words flowed from Ethan confidently. This was his territory, and he felt the walls of his self-doubt crumble. He envisioned every client's face that he had ever worked with, those relying on him to navigate through murky waters. He thought of their children, their fears, their dreams. This was about them. Lucas's voice echoed in the back of his mind, but now it served a new purpose: fuel, not fear. Ethan refused to let the pressure crush him, he embraced it. With a clear focus, he grimly plotted each part of his strategy, aligning witnesses, planning calls, and combining narratives until they were not just a collection of facts but a compelling story that demanded attention. Over the next few days, as Ethan dove into preparation, he felt his growth surging. Late nights, endless revisions, and the thrill of brainstorming took precedence. He would challenge not just Lucas in court, but also his own insecurities and limiting beliefs. Each passing hour transformed Ethan's past into lessons, reborn to create a stronger bond with his mission. At one critical juncture, he confronted Lucas in an unexpected moment, catching him as he strolled down a corridor. The nonchalance in Lucas's step annoyed Ethan. "You've done well to keep your cape clean," Ethan began, his voice steady. "But just wait until the real story comes out." Lucas smirked, unaffected. "Stories are easy to spin, Ethan. Just remember who has been winning all along." Ethan met his gaze, no fear within. "And just remember, while you may think you've got it all figured out, it doesn't negate the truth." As emerging confidence radiated from him, a newfound clarity settled in Ethan's mind. He could feel the gallery of experienced lawyers shifting, whispering, subtly gauging the tension that sparked between the two adversaries. Ethan relished this tension, it was his ally. He turned back to his work, aware that the culmination of their rivalry was approaching. Each moment unearthed new strategies, new angles, and unexpected allies, even among those who once considered Ethan inconsequential. Empowered by a growing circle of support, he could see a pathway emerging. Yet as his preparations intensified, a troubling thought crept in: what if the spotlight he craved wasn't merely to win, but to draw attention to systemic issues? Could he impact more lives than his own? The enormity of this realization swelled in him, but it was undeniable the challenge ahead was becoming clearer, and with it, the stakes kept rising. Each detail he uncovered fed into a larger narrative that could transform lives. Unbeknownst to him, the unfolding of this essence would require not only strategy but also the courage to stand resolutely against authority. Before the case could reach the courtroom, a new piece of evidence slipped into his hands, a revelation that could pivot the entire case in a direction he hadn't anticipated. Ethan paused, contemplating the implications. In the shrouded drama between personal triumph and professional ethics, what lever would he choose to pull? Was it the beginning of a battle for justice, or would it unravel some truths better left concealed? His heart raced as the question lingered in the air: was he ready to face not just Lucas, but the potential ramifications of his mission? Confidence and dread wrestled within him. The moment was approaching swiftly, the transition from planning to execution, inevitable. Ethan stared at the new evidence laid out before him, a tangible embodiment of all the late nights, the sweat, the relentless drive to turn a personal vendetta into a cause for justice. It was a report, a simple document with glaring discrepancies in the financial records of the foreclosure cases. As he examined each entry, Ethan felt a curious mixture of exhilaration and dread swell within him. This could change everything. Yet a shadow lurked at the edge of his thoughts. What price would he have to pay? Advancement into the upper echelons of his profession came with its own set of expectations, and he'd seen too many cases where doing the right thing cost individuals their careers. Could he risk everything he had worked for, all in the name of exposing a lie? With a deep breath, he picked up his phone, compelled to call Mr. Thompson, who by now had become not just a mentor but a beacon of ethical guidance. As the phone rang, Ethan's mind raced, dissecting potential conversations, weighing the pros and cons of revealing this information before the trial. "Ethan, what is going on?" Mr. Thompson's voice crackled through, a rich blend of concern and curiosity. "I found something," Ethan began, steadying his voice. "There are discrepancies in the paperwork. If presented properly, it can invalidate Lucas's initial claims." "That's fantastic news," Mr. Thompson replied, the excitement evident. "You should absolutely bring it up at the preliminary hearing tomorrow. But be cautious, this will draw attention, perhaps even backlash." Ethan's heart thudded. Backlash. It conjured images of legal pushback and scorn from peers he respected. But was silence an option? The thought churned within him like a storm. What if it casts doubt on my integrity? What if they see me as merely a young attorney trying to climb the ladder? "There will always be those who doubt," Mr. Thompson replied firmly. "What matters is the truth you're fighting for. Remember, legal battles aren't solely fought in the courtroom. They permeate every aspect of life. You have a chance to carve out a space for justice." As the word settled, Ethan felt a piercing clarity bolster his resolve. The legal profession demanded a certain audacity. He might not yet have the years to back it up, but he had the conviction. The truth was not merely a concept, it was tangible, actionable, something that could offer respite to those suffering under the weight of greed. When the morning arrived, Ethan's pulse quickened with each step towards the courtroom. Each lawyer he passed in the corridor seemed a titan in comparison, their confidence and armor he longed to possess. But today wasn't about their prowess, it was about standing firm in what he believed. The courtroom buzzed with an intricate dance of lawyers, each representing power and status. Ethan took a breath, focusing on the people who truly mattered, the clients whose lives hung in the balance, the children whose futures were entrenched in the case. As he walked to his seat, the weight of his mission ignited a fire within him. Minutes before the hearing commenced, Lucas entered, radiating that same self-satisfied aura that had, in the past, provoked doubt within Ethan. Their eyes locked for a moment, but now there was no intimidation, only the tingling resolve of impending confrontation. The Judge South gavel called the court into session, and Ethan's heart thundered in tandem with the anticipation in the air. As the opening arguments unfolded, he felt the ground shift and already began calculating the timing of revealing his findings. Should he wait? Should he unleash this knowledge now, risking derision? When the opportunity arose, Ethan stood, seemingly unassuming amidst the fervor of debate. All eyes turned to him, piercing and analytical, curious about the once quiet junior attorney who dared to speak. Resolved, he took a step forward, heart racing with the weight of his conviction. "Your Honor, I have found discrepancies that undermine the credibility of the financial claims made in this case." Gasps echoed through the courtroom, eyebrows raised. Lucas's confident facade cracked for a mere second, revealing something far darker brewing beneath the surface. Yet as Ethan continued, the air shifted, the room buzzed with uncertainty, but also with the thrill of possibility. This was the moment he had trained for, battled through his insecurities for. Could this lead to victory? Or would it unravel into chaos, like some guilty truth clawing its way out of the darkness? The moment of truth had arrived, and with it hung an unresolved question: would he become the architect of his own destiny, or would he find himself ensnared in the very system he sought to challenge? The silence in the courtroom was heavy, an almost palpable tension that suffocated clarity. Ethan could feel the weight of every gaze piercing into him, yet he remained rooted, conscious of the choice he had just made, the choice to step out of shadowy anonymity into the harsh light of scrutiny. As he resumed his seat, his thoughts raced. He had crossed a threshold, the echoes of his declaration reverberated in his mind. The judge, looking both intrigued and skeptical, signaled for Lucas to respond. Ethan's pulse quickened at the unveiling of Lucas's counterarguments. He had defended the foreclosure practices with practiced ease, spinning narratives of market trends and unavoidable losses. Yet beneath the poised facade, Ethan sensed fear, a flickering candle in a storm, when Lucas began to dissect Ethan's findings, Ethan felt a cocktail of doubt and determination surge within him. The seasoned attorney was expertly navigating the conversation, but Ethan had something to anchor him, the truth. It wasn't just data, it was the embodiment of so many lives unjustly disrupted. As the opposing counsel faltered, Ethan honed in on the gaps Lucas left unaddressed, ready to latch onto any slip. In that moment, the stakes had never felt higher. The courtroom atmosphere transitioned from strict professionalism to a crucible, transforming Ethan from a novice into a contender. Every argument that unfolded demanded a response, igniting a fire within him that he hadn't fully recognized until this moment. With every exchange, Ethan grew bolder. He began to analyze the trajectory of his arguments. Were they resonating? Was he convincing the judge? His research and diligent preparation were not mere academic exercises, they were the foundation of a new identity taking shape, a confident advocate for justice. Ethan's mind spun with strategies. He recalled Mr. Thompson's words about tactical maneuvering. He crafted a careful outline in his mind, knowing he would have to strike at the right moment, dissecting Lucas's assurances piece by piece. This was more than a case, it was a test of character, a test of his legal acumen, and a reflection of his values. Your Honor, may I present evidence from the fourth quarter reports? Ethan interjected during a brief recess in the fervent exchange of points. The judge's eyebrows shot up in surprise but nodded. Ethan felt the weight of his decision again, a rush of adrenaline coursed through him as he drew the attention back to his findings, revealing inconsistencies supported by clear documents. The courtroom shifted. Gasps melded with puzzled whispers as Ethan placed each exhibit before the judge, transforming the atmosphere from one of skepticism to a quiet moment of dawning realization. Could this be the moment he leverages into victory? He carefully crafted his delivery, ensuring every word communicated not just the flaws in Lucas's claims, but also illustrated the grave harm done to innocent lives. Yet with every ounce of strength Ethan summoned, a quiet voice in his head warned him of the price he might eventually pay. The looming backlash still hovered, daring him to falter. He could feel his colleagues refocusing their lenses, scrutinizing him now not as a junior attorney but as a player in a serious legal drama. Ethan's thoughts swirled with the fissures of fear and burgeoning confidence, both emotions served as fuel. Could he sway the verdict in favor of justice? Would his choice to expose the truth affirm his place in this hardened world? The thought of condemnation from his peers slithered into his mind, but once again, he cast it aside. Commitment to a higher principle became clearer than his own fears. As the judge prepared to call for a recess, Ethan realized he was on the cusp of altering his professional trajectory. In the quiet of that moment, he noticed Lucas's eyes, menacing, calculating. They held a challenge, a foreboding whisper that this moment was just the beginning. With one final glance at Lucas, Ethan felt both dread and an unmistakable determination surge within him. The battle for justice was far from over. What would his next move be, now that he had unleashed a torrent of scrutiny upon both himself and Lucas? Would it provoke retaliation, not only from Lucas but from within his own ranks? The answer loomed closer. Ethan had ignited a firestorm, and now, the question was whether he could endure the flames. When the courtroom reconvened, a heavy air of anticipation enveloped Ethan. The recess had given him a moment to collect his thoughts, but it also bred unsettling uncertainty. Could he maintain the momentum he had suddenly gathered? The weight of his decision pressed against him, he felt like an explorer teetering on the edge of an uncharted abyss. The judge called for order, and once again, Ethan's heart raced as the proceedings resumed. Lucas leaned forward, readying himself to counter Ethan's evidence. There was an intensity in Lucas's demeanor that hinted at deeper vulnerability beneath his polished exterior. This was no longer a simple legal exchange but a battle of wills, and Ethan was acutely aware of the implications. Your Honor, while Mr. Bennett's passion for this case is commendable, Lucas began, his voice dripping with condescension, it's essential we address the relevance of the so-called evidence he presents. These documents are speculative at best and do not capture the realities influencing the commercial downturn. Ethan clenched his fists, anger bubbling beneath his surface. He knew Lucas's tactic, discredit the messenger by undermining his credibility. But Ethan had anticipated such a reaction. Deeply inhaling, he stilled his racing thoughts. This moment was crucial for him, a test of restraint and composure. Actually, if I may rebut, I believe the evidence directly underlines a criminal neglect that cannot be ignored, Ethan interjected, feeling the undercurrent of adrenaline push him forward. He referenced a specific case study he had unearthed in his exhaustive research, where discarded warning signs had contributed to a community's downfall. As he spoke, he noticed how the judge's brow furrowed in curiosity. In that instant, a newfound courage unfurled within him, an intrinsic belief that the law was not merely a tool for the powerful but a weapon for the oppressed. This realization catalyzed a transformation. Ethan was discovering a talent he had buried under layers of self-doubt, the ability to inspire change through effective advocacy. Yet with empowerment came conflicting thoughts of self-preservation. Would his actions prompt hostility? Would he risk his nascent career for the sake of those he fought for? Lucas's eyes, sharp and predatory, seemed to reveal the ferocity he would bring in retaliation. Still, Ethan pressed on, revising his approach, aligning each argument with evidence of ethical breaches that cut deeper than financial loss. They were emotional and personal. He could not focus solely on corporate pursuits, this had to resonate on a human level. People had faces, names, lives irrevocably altered by the decisions under scrutiny. As he leaned slightly over the table, Ethan paused. It was a bold move, but he caught the judge's eye with a piercing honesty that spoke of authenticity. Your Honor, I urge you to consider not just the numbers, but the very real impacts on families. The practices defended here today did not just fail in business, they devastated communities. A dead silence followed, and in that moment, Ethan saw not just the judge's gaze soften but also a swift flicker of uncertainty in Lucas's steely facade. Was it possible that Ethan's words were having the intended effect? Reinvigorated, he plotted his next moves with precision. His intent was clear: to shift the tide in this legal battle was vital, but equally crucial was the necessity of demonstrating integrity and resolve. His motivations had crystallized. He was no longer simply fighting against Lucas, he was fighting for something greater. As the courtroom settled into a tense silence, a dark realization struck him. The stakes were higher than he had originally acknowledged. Each word he spoke could endanger not only his career but those of his colleagues entrapped in this web of corporate malice. Suddenly, Ethan caught a glimpse of someone he recognized in the gallery, a woman he had consulted who shared her devastating foreclosure story with him. Her eyes glistened with hope and fear, a reminder of the burden he carried. That he could feel the crossroads unraveling. The fight was morphing into a fundamental choice between justice and self-preservation. Would he be able to navigate the choppy waters of these high stakes and still uphold his newfound principles? Or would this battle consume him whole, leaving behind only ashes of ambition once cherished? What dark maneuver would Lucas employ next to retaliate, and how would Ethan prepare for the potential fallout of his growing resolve? The answer loomed ahead. As the final arguments were presented, Ethan found himself standing firmly in his newfound identity, a burgeoning advocate with a slate of challenges that no longer intimidated him. The courtroom, once filled with the shadows of apprehension, now felt charged with possibility as the threads of truth converged around him. Your Honor, I present Exhibit C, Ethan declared, pushing forward not just documents but a beacon of undeniable evidence that illuminated the depths of corporate negligence. The judge's eyes flitted over the exhibit, capturing the details that brought to light the lives impacted by unyielding greed. In that moment, Ethan recognized a pivotal duality: the weight of every individual statement he made echoed far beyond the courtroom, resonating with lives that hung in the balance. Lucas's visage twisted into a mask of discontent, yet beneath the polished surface lay a shadow of vulnerability. For years, Lucas had thrived on dominance, but Ethan had uncovered something more potent: a resolve rooted in righteous indignation. Ethan embraced that power wholeheartedly, rejuvenated with clarity and poise as he crafted a narrative that shifted the paradigm from profit to humanity. Families were uprooted. Futures were dashed because of this disregard, Ethan emphasized, his voice rising with conviction. He knew that each word carried weight and consequence, not just for this case but for his self-worth. He envisioned the collective faces of families affected by the corporate practices, their pain and resilience guiding him forward. As he laid out the facts intertwined with personal stories, Ethan's trajectory transformed before the very eyes of his peers. No longer just a boy in a diner yearning for recognition, he metamorphosed into a formidable force ready to claim his narrative. The fear that once loomed over him morphed into purpose, solidifying his place not just within the legal landscape but also within his own identity. Let this be a testament, he continued, to how an unwavering commitment to truth can reshape our realities. I am not here solely to confront Lucas, he dared to make eye contact with his opponent, I am here to redefine what justice should stand for. The palpable silence in the courtroom acknowledged the gravity of his declaration. Lucas's challenges from earlier began to feel like remnants of a bygone era, his confidence slowly devolving into irritation. Ethan took that vulnerability and fanned it into his own flame of audacity, advancing toward his goal with strategic tenacity. By the time Ethan concluded his argument, he felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. Regardless of the verdict's outcome, he had emerged victorious in ways he never fathomed possible. He had wrestled with self-doubt and shaped it into clarity, an attribute that would serve him for the long haul in his legal career. The applause that erupted afterward was unsolicited but gratifying. His peers, often seen as unapproachable and intimidating, were now witnesses to a transformation forged through resolve and determination. In the days following the trial, Ethan's confidence soared. He found validating notes from veteran lawyers praising his acute observations and tenacity. He saw his relationship with Mr. Thompson evolve from mentorship into collegiality, a partnership forged in mutual respect for their pursuit of justice. Lily, his little sister, visited him during his celebratory moments, her delight an echo of pride that warmed Ethan's heart. This was his victory, not merely a legal one, but a personal odyssey of growth where he conquered fears that had shackled him for too long. The front page of the local newspaper featured a photograph of him alongside the headline, "The Boy Advocate Who Challenged Tradition and Found His Voice." That morning, as he stood in front of the diner, the faint aroma of coffee in the air felt like a reminder of where he began, a stark contrast to where he now stood, with solid confidence, recognized competence woven into his very essence. He had achieved what once felt unattainable. Proving doubt wrong and redefining success to incorporate real advocacy for those in need. Ethan Carter, once a hesitant boy, had transformed into a force of nature in the legal world, a burgeoning attorney who would forge paths for others to follow. The weight of each accomplishment settled deep within him, each success a step higher on the staircase of his own destiny. Today was a new beginning, and he was ready for the next stage of his journey. You need to subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, comment your reactions and theories about the ending, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.